Hello, my name's Lance Chambers. This is just a talk, okay? I'm just going to talk. I'm not going to show any photographs or videos of my trip on the Camino at all. It's just talking about what happened, how I feel about it and things like that. First of all, I apologise for the reflection in the glasses. It's obviously my monitor reflecting, and every now and again I'll be looking down because I have some notes I need to read. So let's start at the beginning. I mean, how did I get to... Oh, before I go any further, this is the first long distance hike or trek I have ever done in my life, and it wasn't very long because it was from Sarria to Santiago. I turned 66 about 2 weeks after I finished. It took me 5 days to walk the 117 something kilometres from Sarria to Santiago. It's almost the minimum you need to do to get a Compostela, which is the certificate. Okay. But for me it was a big thing. Why did I even decide to do it? I guess I decided to do it because I'd reached an age where I was wondering if I could still achieve something of that nature. I've never done anything like this, like I said before, in my life. But I wanted to test myself. It wasn't spiritual, it wasn't religious, it was just, this was famous. I've known about it, the Camino, since I was about 15. And like I said, I turned 66, so I'd known about the Camino for over 50 years. And I just wanted to know if I could do it. And I did. And actually, I plan this year, 2016, to do the whole Camino from Bordeaux. Not from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Pont, which is right at the very beginning of the Pyrenees. And the first 20 plus kilometres is straight up the Pyrenees. I don't believe I could do that without at least, say, 100, 120 kilometres of practice. And that practice will be from Bordeaux to Saint-Jean. So that's what I plan to do this year, starting in August. Early August, and I will be going slowly, so I expect not to finish for at least 40 or 50 days, maybe a bit longer, I don't know. I'm treating this as a holiday this time. Now, how did I get to Sarria? Well, at the time I was actually in the UK, and the cheapest flight I could get was directly to Santiago, and then travel by bus or by train to Sarria. So for 34 euros, I think it was, I caught Ryanair from Stansted to Santiago, caught the bus at the airport into the city, and the bus went to the bus port and then straight to the railway station. So I decided to take the train. So I caught the train with the help of some expatriate Brits who could sort of tell me where to go, what to ask, which platform, etc., etc. They spoke Spanish. Not particularly well, but they certainly spoke a lot more than I did, and read Spanish a lot better than I did, because I can't read any or speak any. And yet I got along on the Camino very, very well indeed. Almost everybody at every place that I wanted to stay or eat a meal spoke a smattering of English, certainly enough for me to get by, which was brilliant. So anyway, I caught the train. The train went to A Coruña, which is on the north coast, and then from there went to Sarria. By the time I got to Sarria, it was about 9:30 at night, getting very, very dark. I had no idea where I was, but there was a main street in front of the railway station that just headed straight into town. It was quite warm that night. I started early in August. 2nd of August was the day I got there. It was quite warm, unpleasant, muggy. I walked into town and just walked and walked and walked until I went through the centre of town and started to head out the other end. And there was a few people walking around, especially in the main part of town. Everything was closed, seemed to be closed. Everything was closed. I thought of going to the police station because there was a sign that sort of said police, and going to ask them, again in fractured Spanish, if I knew any. I know a little bit of Italian, and I thought I might be able to get through. Anyway, I met an old bloke probably about my age actually, and I'm calling him old. And I just went up to him and sort of said, scusi, mia peregrino, which in Spanish I believe means I am a pilgrim. Questo, which I think is Italian, el Camino, which is question, please, where's the Camino? And he just pointed up a hill and he said, that away. And at the top I could see the cupola of a cathedral or a church. So I thanked him profusely and just headed up around a corner and up a hill. And there was a church there, but again, it was closed. But right on the corner, there was a pub, what in Australia we'd call a pub and in England we'd call a pub. And I went in there, and it's a very, very small little place, and I was just exhausted. I'm carrying this blasted backpack in this heat, and I had overpacked far, far too much, 17 kilos in my backpack, and I also carried a front pack, which weighed 7 kilos. So I was carrying 24 kilos, an insane, ludicrous amount, and I overcame that problem later, and I'll tell you how I overcame the problem of carrying 24 kilograms. And anyway, this little pub, I had a couple of beers and so on. There were 2 German blokes there, and we started to talk, and they said, oh, you're looking for somewhere to stay? And I said, yes. And they said, well, if you just continue down here for about 1.5 kilometers, you'll come to a nunnery that actually is a hostel, and if you knock on the door, they may offer you a place to sleep. Well, the young guy behind the bar sort of understood what was going on, and he just indicated to me to follow him. And he went out of the bar, through a door, through another door, down some stairs, through another door, and there was a dormitory with about 30 beds in it. One of the beds was occupied, and I said how much, and he just went like that. And so I gave him a €10 note. He gave me €1 in change, a key to a locker, which was far too small for me to put anything in. Certainly my big backpack wouldn't go in there. And he gave me a plastic bag with a very strong paper sheet and a very strong paper pillowcase for the bed. And in fact, every place that I stayed in, every hostel I stayed in, offered exactly the same things. This strong paper pillowcase and a strong paper sheet. And a normal sheet from America or Europe or Australia or anywhere like that's no good, because the pillows in Spain are very, very wide, incredibly wide pillows. On a single bed, they go from side to side. They cover the whole of the mattress in a single bed. So even if I had brought a pillowcase from Australia, it would have been useless. But I had read online that there's a whole pile of things I needed to take that I found that on the short trip from Sarria to Santiago, I didn't need. And those 2 things were, I was told to take a sleeping bag, or at the very least a bed sheet, and a pillowcase, and toilet paper. Because I was told you need the pillowcase and the sheet because of bed bugs. There were no bed bugs anywhere, because these places, of course, even if you have bed bugs, they don't go into the mattress because the paper sheet stops that. And they don't go into the pillow because the paper pillowcase stops that. And there were toilets everywhere, and every single one of them had toilet paper in. So I carried that. And I carried a sleeping bag, which I didn't need to, and 4 rolls of toilet paper that I didn't need to. In fact, I left them at the last hostel that I stayed in Santiago. I may use the word albergue, which I think is the French pronunciation. The Spanish, I think, is albergue, which just means hostel. Okay, so I may use that word occasionally. So I spent the night there and started off the next morning. The other bloke in the hostel got up very early to me. It was very, very early, and I found on the Camino that most people get up very early in the morning. Some leave around 5:30 in the morning. However, that day I was not inclined to start very early in the morning. But the sun came through the windows, and about 7:30, got out of bed, got dressed, and took off. I did not have a shower. I had a shower the night before. I always shower before I go to bed because I'm sweaty and sticky and covered in dried perspiration and very uncomfortable. But in the morning, I don't. And in fact, I'm not sure that anybody does in the morning. I headed off, and the first probably 10 kilometres out of Sarria is uphill. And don't forget, I was not fit. I've done nothing in preparation for the Camino at all. It took me a long time. But that day I covered 17.5 kilometres before I came to a hostel that was just beautiful. Lovely hostel, cafe, tables out, and that was it for the Camino. That's the sort of accommodation you can get on the Camino. It's really incredible accommodation. The food is cheap, the food is good, there are cafes everywhere with brilliant coffee. So don't worry. But don't forget, I'm just talking about from Sarria to Santiago. What happens before then, I don't know. I might let you know at the end of this year because of the trip I plan to take. But if it's anything like the part from Sarria to Santiago, you will not have a problem at all with food or with accommodation. However, it was in August. I tell a lie, 2nd of September, not August. I didn't go in August. August is the peak. And September's sort of on the shoulder. But even then, twice, I took the last bed in hostels. I never had to go to another hostel. I never went to a hostel that was full. There was always at least one bed. Maybe that was just pure luck on my part. Anyway, towards the end of my first day, I ended up with a terrible pain in my left thigh. It wasn't joints or anything like that. It was just felt like muscle pain. Anyway, I ended up hobbling. I'd go 500 metres and then stop, 500 metres and stop. And I decided to take a rest day. After my very first day walking, I decided to take a rest day the next day in the same hostel. And I started off the next day. No pain. Everything felt great for about the first 4 or 5 hours of walking. And then the pain came back. But a young American lady, a nurse, saw me hobbling and sort of said, look, when you get to the next cafe, just stop, I'll be there, and I'll sort it out for you. So I hobbled to the next cafe, and she was there, and I don't know whether you believe this stuff or not, but she took me aside, I sat on a stone, and she did Reiki on my leg. And she said, oh, okay, I know where it is now. And she just pressed into into the side of my leg. And she said, that's where the pain is, isn't it? I went, yes, that is where the pain is. She said, right, I know exactly what it is. It's a blocked lymphatic node. So what she did is she just got her thumbs like that, right, and just pressed, pushing down my leg until the pain disappeared. And then she rubbed in some eucalyptus oil, cream on my leg. Said, whatever you do, don't touch it and then touch your eyes because it'll burn. And coming from Australia, I know what eucalyptus can do and how painful it can be when it gets into a mucous membrane, especially the eyes and the lips. And the pain never came back. The pain never ever came back after this wonderful lady's treatment. So I'm incredibly thankful to her. Cafes and hostels. Walking the first day, I think I've described that to you, what it was like. Thigh pain, forgotten. Yes. After a couple of days of walking, I realised that I needed to recharge my tablet. Not my phone, my tablet, because I communicate using Skype. I don't communicate using my phone. So I don't take a phone and a tablet. I just take the tablet. Some people may want to use their phone. And I use Skype for communicating. It just costs nothing. Costs absolutely nothing. I phone my wife every single day. She was in the UK as well. But I forgot my converter plug to convert from Europe to the Australian plug. And I asked my wife and sort of said, look, I'm an idiot. I packed everything, got everything ready, and forgot to put my converter plugs in my bag. So be very careful, please. Maybe it's just me, I'm a bit of an idiot, and you're less of an idiot, but maybe double or triple check. Where was I? I've forgotten where I was. You see, one of the other problems of being my age, you forget how far you've come along. A few of the costs. That first one cost me €9. I never paid more than 10. The highest price I ever paid was 10 for a bed, and the cheapest was 9 for a bed. €1 for a glass of red wine. Meals, anywhere between €5 and €10 for a meal. €5, you don't get very much, but it's good food. €10, you get more than enough. Okay, and that was in little cafes or cafes in big towns where you're full of people everywhere. I never paid more than that. One of the easiest ways to travel or walk is to walk with somebody who you talk to. I met a couple, a mother and son. They're both Australian. She works in Sydney and lives and works in Sydney, Australia. By the way, I live south of Perth in the rural area of Western Australia, down in the south, where it's cooler. And he works in Santiago doing gene sequencing. Boom, boom. Anyway, she'd wanted to do the Camino. She was probably older than I was. He was in his mid to late 30s. And she asked around her children who would come with her, who would be willing to. He was the only one out of her 4 children. And it was great. We walked, met them about 10 o'clock in the morning, and we walked until about 6:30 at night to get to a place called Sarria, where Doreen, my lovely wife, had agreed to post my converter plug. If you want to post to somewhere like that, you address it. My wife addressed it to Lance Chambers. Post with an E on the end, restant. I think it means post rest place. Sarria, Spain. End of story. I got into Sarria on a Saturday. I spent the night there. Sunday I had to spend the day there. It was great. Nice little town. Nice little town. Fantastic market, fruit and veg and meats and all the rest of it on the Sunday around the church. And Monday morning, early morning, when the post office opened, my parcel was there. Doreen had actually posted it on the Friday in the UK, and she was warned that it may not get there until Tuesday or Wednesday. However, it was there first thing Monday morning. So I walked. That was the longest walk I did, was with that Australian mother and son couple, 27.5 kilometres. And I think that was pretty good. It's the longest I've ever walked, far longer than I've ever walked in my life in one day. What was that? That's 15 miles, I believe. 17.5 miles. 17.5 miles. So, but one thing I did discover on the walk is that you get into a zone, and it's because I think the walking engages your conscious mind. You're looking at where you step, you're looking at your surroundings, and it requires very little real thinking, very little real thought. Okay, and it just all becomes automatic. But your conscious mind is engaged. And what happens is your subconscious mind seems to come to the fore, or it did for me at least. And I found myself thinking about all sorts of things about me and about my life and the people who I love and the people who I care for, and thinking about the things I want to do with my life that I haven't done, thinking about the things I've done that I shouldn't have done. It was a real revelation for me, because that's not who I am. I've always been in my mind, not in my heart. I'm not a very feeling person, I'm sorry to say. Not demonstrably so anyway. But I started to feel about me. What are my values? Why am I doing this? Why do I allow this to happen in my life? Why don't I do this, which is what I prefer to do? Why aren't I, not exactly the twilight years of my life, I hope, but in the mature years of my life, why aren't I concentrating on doing the things I want to do, not the things I feel compelled to do because they are what society expects of me, what other people expect of me at my age. You're an old man, you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, blah, blah, blah. And I think that contemplative part of the Camino is, for me, was very much an eye-opener. I mean, a real eye-opener. So there is this idea of getting into some sort of zone when you perform a mindless, I'll call it a mindless, physical act. And that was great. And walking with other people, one of the most joyous times on the Camino with other people was this long walk with this couple. We were talking about all sorts of things. We were laughing, we were getting serious, we were just discussing our lives, everything. It was just amazing. And one thing that's amazing about it is, I think that I know I will never meet them again. So you can be totally honest about yourself, about your values, who you are, with somebody who you can click with, that will disappear out of your life. It's almost, I suspect, like confession in the confessional. I know you'll meet the priest maybe again next Sunday if you go to confession, but you know it will never go anywhere else. And so you can be totally open about who you are, what you want in life, and there's no recrimination, there's nobody measuring you up or valuing you or devaluing you. It was absolutely lovely. And the other thing I found is that there's no sense of guilt on the Camino when you start walking with somebody, you talking and so on and so on. And this happened to me with a Japanese woman. I know a very little bit of Japanese because I went to Japan when I was about 9 with my father for about 3 months. So I just started a conversation with a little bit of Japanese, and from there on we spoke English. She spoke passably good English. But after a while I realised I was walking too slowly for me. There's nothing else for us to talk about. There was no point in us walking together anymore. And totally free of guilt. Society would normally say, oh, well, you know, that's not nice just to walk away. I just said, you know, sayonara, and just walked on. Another thing I found on this part of the trip, the early part, is there are blackberries all along the route, the sides of the paths, and apple trees. And I was told that they are actually planted for the pilgrims by the farmers and the people who own the land on the route. Later on it changed from apples and blackberries to chestnuts and figs, but the fig trees weren't in. Now, raw chestnuts. You can actually eat raw chestnuts. You don't have to heat them all up. They taste a lot better heated up. But you can eat raw ones. But peel the skin off. Not the outside skin, which obviously has to come off, but the inside brown, hairy skin as well, because that will choke you. And you need to drink a lot of water if you're going to eat chestnuts. But they're quite palatable. They're a source of food, carbohydrate. They're quite palatable, but they glug your mouth up a bit. You do need to drink a lot of water. You might need rest days. I did. Like I said, I rested after the pain in my thigh. I rested in Palas de Rey. After Palas de Rey, I didn't. I went straight through to Santiago. It was an experience. it was an incredible experience. And if you aren't sure whether you should or shouldn't do it, or want to not do the Camino, please do it. And it's a fantastic introduction, because you don't have to carry all your food and all your water with you. There are hospitals if you need a hospital. There are cities on the route. There are hostels and cafes everywhere. Okay? There are shops. Don't take everything with you. There are shops not in the little villages, but there are certainly shops in the cities. You can get almost anything you need. Okay? So don't overburden yourself. Got to Santiago. Fantastic hostel, actually, called Aquarius. Spelt very differently, no AQ, AC. And if you're careful and when you read it, Aquarius, it was a fantastic hostel, it really was. About 5 kilometres out of the centre of Santiago. Again, €10 for the night. A lot of people. You'll find a lot of people snoring, invariably blokes. I can sleep through snoring because I'm a very deep sleeper and I easily get to sleep. But I wake up early in the morning. And I started to get used to early in the morning, 5:30. And I just got out of bed 5:30 every morning and started hiking. And in fact, one day it was glorious. The moon was out, it was a full moon. I almost immediately went into these woodlands, through the trees. It was magnificent. Had a torch. I do suggest you take a small torch with you. Through the woodlands, though, it was beautiful. There was the moonlight coming through. And most of the time I could see the pathway, because I think I was going through birch trees or something, because they were all beautifully white in the moonlight, and I could actually see the line of trees. And not only that, in front of me, a good 100 yards away, 200 yards away, there were two blokes. I know that because I overtook them later on, shining their torches. So I didn't need my torch. I just followed a straight line until they veered off and I couldn't see the straight line always. And then I'd flash my torch on for 5 seconds, make sure I was okay for the next 20, 30 yards, and then turn it off. And it was magical, absolutely magical. That was beautiful. I'll never forget that. Anyway, I reached Santiago and I headed for the cathedral. And there was a line outside the cathedral because it was early in the morning. I'd done the last 10 kilometres in a couple of hours, and got there before midday, when the mass is on, where they swing the incense burner, the great big incense burner. And the line was about half a mile long, about 10 or 15 wide, and I realised I wouldn't get in, certainly not before midday when the mass started. So I just went and got my Compostela, and that was it. Santiago is an old city, but I didn't stay. I headed to the airport the next morning, and went to book a ticket to get back home to the UK to meet up with my wife again. They wanted €500 to fly from Santiago to the UK. Don't forget, it cost me 34 to get there. They wanted €500. I refused to be ripped off like that. I absolutely refuse. I did some talking around and asking around, and apparently they all do it. All the airlines do it. They know a lot of people arrive at the Santiago airport after having done the Camino, and they're just desperate to get home. So they'll gouge you. So I refused to do that. I wasn't going to be gouged by anybody. So I decided to head to A Corona. Remember, I'd caught the train to A Corona, and I knew that ferries to the UK came into A Corona because I'd read it online about it's part of what's called the English Way, and it's again one of those minimum trips to get your Compostela, A Corona to Santiago. So I went to the train station, caught the train to Corona. I'd already been there once. got in at the train station, and I asked somebody where the ferry port was. At the train station, could somebody please direct me to the ferry port? And it was what for me is a young Spaniard, about 32, 34. And he said, the ferries stopped running about 5 years ago. There are no more ferries to England. And I went, oh, so do you know where I can catch a ferry? Because I thought the idea of a ferry trip was quite interesting, okay? This whole thing, let's keep the interest going. And he said, well, he got on his little smartphone and checked on his phone and said, well, there is a ferry from Santander. And this is how you get to Santander. You catch a bus from here to Oviedo. From Oviedo, you catch a train to Ferrol. From Ferrol, you catch a bus to Santander. And you'll get into Santander, just excuse me. You get into Santander about 8:30 in the morning in time for the ferry. So I thought, okay, that sounds like an adventure, let's do that. So this guy, he was absolutely lovely, drove me to the bus station to catch the bus from A Coruña to Oviedo. The bus was going to go in like 3 minutes. So he yelled at everybody to get out of the way of the ticket window and said, you know, I've got to get this guy on this bus. We've got 2 minutes to go. Please, please, please. Everybody got out of the way. He went up to, got the ticket, raced me to the bus, and asked the driver to let me know when we got to Oviedo where the train station was. By the way, it was about 100 yards away from the bus station in Oviedo. But on the way in the car, I said, why are you doing this? This is wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so appreciative, but why are you doing this? And he said, because I did a lot of traveling when I was young. And everywhere I went, people helped me. And I swore that whenever I found somebody who was traveling that I could help, I would do it. And I think that's a very salutary lesson for everybody who has done things like this and travelled. If you can, help others, because you will come to understand how difficult it can be in a foreign country, I assume. So anyway, I jumped on board this bus to Oviedo, got to the train station in Oviedo. Like I said, it was about 100 metres away from the bus station. The bus driver just stopped the bus just before he pulled into the bus station and just pointed and said, over there, la station de train, or something like that anyway. Okay? And I got there, waited. I got on this train. It cost nothing. And it was 400 kilometres. The train to Ferrol is something like 400 kilometres, I believe, from memory. And I sat on this train waiting for it to take off, about 20 minutes before it's going to take off. And it has one of those little things up the top that tells you the names of all the stops. I sat watching it for a while, and watched it for a while, looked up again, and it was going, still going. Towns that I hadn't seen before. And then it came back to the beginning, and I thought I would count all the stops. There's 105 stops on what is called this little local train from Oviedo to Ferrol. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. 105 stops. I have a sneaking suspicion this is probably one train route that every single train aficionado should go on, simply because of the number of stops. Work it out. It's 400 kilometres. That's a stop every three and a lot actually, less than 4 kilometres between stops. You can imagine it takes a long, long time to get to Ferrol. And it did. I got into Ferrol, I think, just before midnight or just after midnight. About 5 stops before we got on. It was Saturday night. About 5 or 6 stops before we got there, the train started to get hundreds and hundreds of young people, male and female, dressed up. Apparently they have fantastic nightclubs in Ferrol, and all these young people are heading off to nightclubs and so on and so on and so on. And so the last 3/4 of an hour was noisy, boisterous, full of kids laughing and joking and flirting. It was fantastic, really lovely. So get in to Ferrol. Again, at the train station, I asked sort of where's the bus station, and a porter, or somebody who worked for the train station, took me outside and just pointed down the road, and that's the bus station, which was again 400 or 500 yards away, and I could see it down the road. So I walked up there, realizing I was going to have to wait for about 7 hours to catch the bus to get to Santander. And there was one of these ticket machines. I don't like using the ticket machines, I like windows, but at that time of night all the windows were closed. The only staff member there was one bloke who may have been a cleaner or security or something, I don't know. He wouldn't talk, nothing. So I was bored senseless. I'd read all the books I'd taken. I didn't have any other books. By the way, I left my books behind, and I wrote in them, you know, please, if you want to read this, please take it, and when you finish reading it, please leave it somewhere else for somebody else to take. I do that whenever I travel. I always find books. People have left books in all sorts of places, and I do that. When I buy a book and I finish with a book, I fill that little thing in, please take this book, read it, and pass it on. Thank you very much, Lance Chambers. Hopefully one day I'll find one of my old books. Anyway, here I am in Ferrol, and I got bored, and they had these machines. Like I said, I don't like using the self-serve ticket machines, but I did. Anyway, I went, pushed all the buttons, did all the things, and it told me that there was actually a bus leaving at about 1 o'clock. So I thought, damn it, I'll book that now, because the ticket counters won't be open at that time. So I got the ticket, again, very cheap, about 12 euros, I think it was. Oh, by the way, the train ticket from Oviedo to Ferrol, that 400 kilometres, I think was about 24 euros. You'll have to do all the conversions yourself. It's not very expensive. It's actually damn cheap. That's about 30 Australian dollars, I think, and probably about 28 American or 27 American. Anyway, here I am in Ferrol, suddenly realising I can catch a bus at 1 o'clock in the morning for the three-hour trip to Santander. So I get on this bus. 3 hours later, I'm in Santander, and I ask for where the ferry port is, again, of somebody at the railway station, one of the people who works at the railway station. And again, he just points down the street. Now, this enormous building with I don't know, concrete anchor on the top of the building, very obviously something to do with the port. So I get my backpack and my front pack and everything else, and I start walking down the street towards it. I walk down the street, I go past the street with a lot of lovely young ladies with incredibly short skirts on. This is 1:15 in the morning. Freezing cold, all without goosebumps. It's as though they're out there almost every night or every morning of the day. What they're doing there, I have no idea, of course. At my age, you don't know what this sort of thing's about. So I kept on going. It's part of the story, and I'll explain it later. There's 2 main roads, one coming in, one going out. Okay. So I cross these 2 main roads. There's a grassed area, and the other side of the second road, there's this great big concrete triangle. It's flat. It's quite thick, of course, made of concrete, quite high. The apex probably 15 feet high. I skirt that. There's a bench there, a wooden bench. I go across, I go through, check the building out, and I walk past part of the building and it says Britannia Ferries. Okay, so I know I'm at the right place. This is where the ferries leave from. So I walk around the building and I go around the side. I was thinking maybe something might be open, a coffee shop in there or something, but nothing, absolutely nothing. But I get into this little cul-de-sac around the back next to some glass doors, and inside it's obviously a coffee shop for breakfast and things like that. And outside there are some tables and some plastic chairs. So here's the glass door. There's a concrete part around here, and then it goes down. So you come up and around into this little cul-de-sac. So I take my backpacks off and so on, get some of the plastic chairs, push them close together and try and rest with my legs out, sitting on one with my legs on the other, and so on and so on. Just resting, waiting for this thing to open at about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. I'm there 1:30. About 20 minutes later, I hear 2 shots. Bang. A couple of seconds. Bang. Now, I know what a shot sounds like from a pistol and from a rifle. These were pistol shots. And I thought, oh shit. Anyway, I told you there's the glass doors, there's the wall, and then there's the wall here. Well, on top of this wall, there were some plants. Okay? So I kept low and I peered through the plants. I couldn't see anything. Don't forget this is near a harbour. It's a harbour area. The shots, I can't see anything. So I sneak around and peer further back towards the road to see if I can see anything. And I told you about this concrete pyramid shape with the bench. Well, on the bench there's a young couple having sex. And I thought, well, if they're not bothered, why should I be bothered? So I went and snuck back inside, put my legs up on the chairs again, and then the mind started to actually kick in, and I thought, I'm in a cul-de-sac here. If anything happens, I'm gone. You know, I'm either going to be robbed blind, or robbed blind and maybe maimed or killed. So I decided to put my backpack on and leg it back to the bus port. So I get into the bus port, and they've got free Wi-Fi, which is all over Spain. Every single albergue has Wi-Fi. Most cafes have Wi-Fi. And this bus station had Wi-Fi, so I thought, oh, I'm bored. I got onto the Wi-Fi to confirm the time that the ferry was going, and found out there wasn't a ferry until Monday. So all the way from Santiago, that journey, the buses, the trains, etc., 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 to get to Santander to catch a ferry, and there's no damn ferry, which is typical of my life, because I don't plan things. I fly by the seat of my pants, is a saying that some of you may know. And it does make life interesting. But also I didn't book a return ticket for a very, very concrete reason. I didn't know how long it was going to take me to finish the Camino. And I never book return tickets, because I don't know whether I'm going to want to leave a place early or whether I'll want to stay there. So I never know. I never prejudge I'm going to want to stay there for 4 days. I might want to stay there for 4 weeks, or I might land and half an hour later want to leave. I don't know. So I never commit myself. I always buy one-way tickets. So I said, stuff this. And just as I sort of said, stuff this to myself, what the hell am I going to do now? A bus pulled in that was the airport bus going to the Santander airport. So I thought, why not? I'll give that a try. So I caught the bus, got to the Santander airport about 45 minutes before a Ryanair flight was going to fly back to Stansted. It didn't cost me 500 and it didn't cost me 34. It cost me about 170. Still a rip-off, But these days you've got to expect that. If they can screw you to the wall, they will. And I flew back. That's my little trip on the Camino. Points to take away. There's some things. Remember I told you I got into this state in my head. There's some points. I don't know if these will be of any interest to you. There's 14 of them. And number one, if the path is getting hard, okay, look, bring your vision down. And now I'm talking not just about the Camino, I'm talking about life in general. If the task ahead of you is getting hard, look a little bit closer to home. Stop trying to look at the big picture, because that can become too daunting. And I realised that climbing that blasted hill out of Sarria, if I looked at the top, I was almost overwhelmed and started to think, I can't do this. I don't have what it takes physically to get to the top. So I dropped my gaze, and I know I can take another 4 or 5 steps. And I knew that the whole time. I kept my vision down. I can take the next 4 steps. I can take the next 4 steps. And if you do that, you get to the top. Because you don't become mentally overwhelmed or emotionally overwhelmed by the task ahead of you. Because you've made the task small. You've broken it into small little pieces, and each of those pieces you can do. When the task is easy, when you're walking on the flat, look ahead, for God's sake, look around you, check everything out. It's wonderful. When the going's easy, make sure you know what's ahead of you. When the going gets tough, make sure you can manage what's just ahead of you. Makes it so much easier. Every now and again you need to check that you're on the right road and still heading towards your goal. On the Camino it's not difficult, because there are these yellow arrows all over the place. From Sarria there's kilometre posts and sometimes half-kilometre posts all along the way. It's very hard to get lost. I understand earlier on it's much more easy to get lost. Okay? Know your limits. Don't start something you know you can't finish. I wasn't sure whether I could or couldn't finish the Camino. I wasn't sure, so I went and did it. If I knew for a fact I couldn't do it, I wouldn't have started. Okay. Use the resources that are available to you. Whatever the source, doesn't matter where it comes from. I had apples on the side of the road. I picked blackberries. Why not? They're brilliant. They're fantastic. They're free. They're tasty. They're probably as healthy as food you can get. Use the resources available to you. You might remember, it was on the news about 8 months ago here in Australia, and I understand it went worldwide. There was an Australian who got lost in the outback in the goldfields in Western Australia. He survived. They found him many, many days later, and he survived by eating ants. He made use of the resources available to him. If he had not have eaten the ants, he actually would have died, doctors said. He would not have survived if he had not eaten them. Okay? Continually check on what you've already accomplished. Every day when I'd walked 10 kilometres, 20 kilometres, whatever, I was proud of the fact that each of those was an accomplishment I had achieved. I had gotten that much further along. It's important. And make sure you maintain what you have built in the broader sense of your life. Make sure that if you build something, that you try and maintain it, look after it, like you do a relationship with your children, with your people that you love, your wife, your husband, whatever. Build the relationship, recognise your accomplishments and try and maintain what you have already built. And realise that there's nothing wrong with backing up. Sometimes we take the wrong path. And when you take the wrong path, it doesn't make you any less of a man or woman or person than you are. You just need to realise, I need to stop going down this road. The further I go along here, the more lost I become. So back up, find the direction you should be going and go in that direction. Look for obstacles and plan how to get through before you get to them, if you can see them, if you know they're coming. Be ready for them, plan for them, avoid them if you can. And even better, see if you can actually convert something into an opportunity. I mean, a rock in the path can be a seat for you to sit on. Adjust your speed to the terrain. And I had to do that a lot. Going downhill sometimes is far more difficult than going uphill. Slow down, be careful. I took poles with me. Without the poles, walking poles, it would have been a disaster. Going up and down would have been an absolute disaster. Look out for shortcuts and opportunities in your life. I realised this when I've forgotten the place it was, but you come in and you're supposed to climb this tall set of stairs, and then you're diverted off to the left, and then off to the right again, and then up, and an S. However, all the arrows point that way, but there's a shortcut. After you do the left and you're coming this way, there's a shortcut up to the next one. And nearly everybody was doing this. When I got up to the top, as I saw people coming, I'd point to the shortcut and say, come up this way, come up here, come here, here, come here. Also, by the way, where that big staircase is, you're crossing an enormously long bridge. You don't have to go up the stairs. I think the local businesses have put the arrows in there and eliminated the other ones to get you up to their hostels and cafes and so on. If you want to avoid the town, and there's not much in the town, just walk left across the bridge, walk left across the river, and then you'll come to another bridge which you have to cross over anyway to get back onto the Camino. So if you want to avoid that, just when you see those tall steps in front of you, left as soon as you cross the bridge, left again over the next bridge, and you'll see the arrows sending you off on. Adjust your speed to the terrain. When it gets tough, slow down, don't be stupid. Life is not a race. It really isn't. And when you come to my age, you realise that you don't want to hurry to the end, and that there is an end. When you're young, 15 and 20, you don't think about stuff like that there is an end, but there is. So don't race, unless you love running. Hey, and if you love running, then damn well run. But you don't have to. Life is not a competition to see who gets to the end first. Relax. Ease your way by going at a speed that's comfortable. Make your life give yourself as much fun and joy out of life as you can. Honestly. Be open to change in the way you think and feel and the things you do and the things you believe. Be open to change. If you're not, you miss so much that is interesting and exciting. You really do. Remember, there are many ways to get around obstacles and dead ends. Don't stress. Just find another way. That's it. That's it. My bags, I told you I would tell you how I overcame the problem with my heavy backpack, my 17 kilo backpack. First thing I did to try and reduce the weight was to get rid of as much stuff as I realised I would never use. I just didn't need, okay? That reduced the weight by about 3 kilos. But I noticed that a lot of people were walking just with small day packs, and I thought, well, how the heck are they? Where are the changes of clothes? Where's this? Where's that? Where's this? And because I knew that I couldn't get rid of everything. And I found out at one of the hostels, just by looking, that there's these little tickets. I'd come into a hostel sort of early in the afternoon, and there'd be all these backpacks with these tickets on them. So I asked what the heck was going on. For €3 a day, you can get your bag sent forward to another hostel. And in all the hostels, there are these little bits of paper, all printed up nicely, that tell you about upcoming hostels along the route towards Santiago. So what you do is you just pick one that you know you can get to within a comfortable amount of time. and give the guy behind the counter €3. Fill this little tab in with your name and which hostel you want it delivered to and where, Porto Marim, whatever, and attach it to your backpack and just leave your backpack. I was a little bit wary the first time. I thought, somebody's going to run off with my backpack, but who wants dirty socks and underwear and smelly shirts? Not many people interested in those sorts of things. So quite safe, never a problem. So I got rid of my heavy backpack by getting it sent on. Again, I know that happens before Sarria, but I don't know where it starts. So all up to you. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you got something useful out of it. I have 2 other YouTube videos. One is about backpacks and the other one is about footwear. And I think they may have some useful information in them for you as well. So just search for Lance Chambers on YouTube and you should be able to pick those up. Okay, bye. Have fun. And I'll be back next year with a better, hopefully a bit of a documentary about the Camino.